Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is English Custom Woodworking. Today I'm going to do a real short video on setting up my router table. I'm going to be using a couple different bits, but first I'm going to start out using a roundover bit. This is a 1/4 inch roundover bit on a 1/4 inch shank. So 1/4 inch radius, 1/4 inch shank. What I normally like to do, this is an older router that's underneath here mounted. It's an old Craftsman, and it's kind of got some limited adjustment options. But what I like to do is make sure that you get your, just bump the camera. So I make sure that I get the radius buried enough down into the hub as far as I can to hold on to it. So when you turn it on and it's running, you're not wanting to just barely put the tip of the shank in there. So on mine, what I have is a locking knob, and then I have a rotor adjustment. So what I like to do on mine to get this thing adjusted right is find just a little piece of scrap wood, and if you guys can see, it's got a nice flat edge on it, on this edge here. And what I'll do is just span that distance. I'm not sure if you can see or not, but at the very bottom tip of that radius, that edge there, spanning the distance from here, because you're going to be running your material across this, I just want it to barely sit right on top of that tip. Don't even really want it to touch, because if you do, then you're gonna cut a little edge there. The other thing that I've noticed too is as long as you've got this thing mounted down good, when you turn it on, you know, it's got a lot of torque. You just don't want it to change where your adjustment is whenever you turn it on. And hopefully that's not the case. But I got it just about where I want it. I've got my knob locked down. And so my table comes with different inserts, and they basically are just for all of these things are doing is basically it's allowing you to have a place for your material to sit so it doesn't fall down in. Plus it's kind of limiting where the dust goes. This one here is not going to hit, as long as you can spin this thing where it doesn't hit. You should be good. One thing I've noticed though on mine is that, see, that matches up good on the metal to metal, but the plastic is actually below. So don't use the plastic as a guide as to where your blade is going to hit your material that you're using. Once again, disclaimer: make sure that you're following all the manufacturer's guidance for safety, especially with a router. These things can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing and you're not taking your time and being careful. Once again, I said in a previous video, never wear gloves when you're using any type of equipment like this. Use safety glasses, and I would always recommend using hearing protection with the router, because these things are extremely loud. I do have a dust collection vacuum that I've got that doesn't do a great job, but it will help me just a little bit, because routers will throw chips and you will absolutely create the most gigantic mess ever. I'll run a couple pieces through and show you what I'm doing here, just rounding over in some of my butcher blocks, cutting boards. So I'll run a few pieces through and show you what I'm doing. And this is going to be loud, so I will probably cut over and try to edit this with the noise that I'm making. All right, let's run a couple pieces through. One side note is that one thing that I do, I have my router is plugged into a strip that's built into the table, which is hooked to a plug here. So this is how I turn mine on and off. One safety note, that one thing that I always get into the habit of doing is I never take my bits on and off, and this is just me being over precautious, but I never take my bits in and out of my router with the machine plugged in. I always unplug it from the outlet, do my stuff, just because this switch here, if it got caught on your clothes or you just happen to bump it, I don't know, don't trust it. I'd rather take a few extra seconds, plug it in, no big deal, no hassle to me, and that way you're just a little bit safer. All right, let's run a few pieces through. Well, as you can see, the plastic guard that I had was loose, and the vibration of the table kicked it out, and I knew I was going to do something else. I knew that was loose.
This goes to show you got to pay attention.
So what I like to do on mine, let's try this again, which I'm not using my fence for this. I just run it through this bit has got a guide on this roller here, so all I'm doing is running it through. So what I like to do, and I've done it in the past, and I just forgot to do it because I got in a hurry because I'm filming, is just take a piece of tape, masking tape, painter's tape, and if your plastic piece is loose, to keep that from happening, couple pieces of tape, it'll keep it from vibrating and it'll keep it from popping out. Okay, let's start all over again. noticed that some of them I was doing both sides, routing both edges, or all the edges on both sides, but some of them I was not. It's just the way I like to do some of my different cutting boards, just my style. I noticed on that last piece though, I'm gonna check something here real quick. Started to kind of get a little bit of an edge, and I think my bit has worked itself and walked itself up just a hair, because it's starting to hit there now. My last few pieces, I noticed that there was a little bit of a routed edge there, so I'm going to make an adjustment and I'll be right back. So I just noticed that my motor lock mount has actually cracked and broken. So I guess we're done for the day, and we'll be buying a new router to put in this table, I guess. So maybe we'll do a review when we come back. Okay, so I did a real quick adapt and overcome maneuver there. This style of old router here has a locking pin swivel that sits on the outside, and basically what it has is a little indentation there, and you can move that pin in, and it grabs a hold of the center hub, or the engine, or the motor hub, and it keeps it from spinning. So then you can grab a hold of the collar with a wrench and loosen it. So where that locking pin swivels from, it basically there's a insert in a plastic part of the motor shroud, and it had cracked and had bent over, and then the actual screw that was holding it in had actually bent. So I just pulled all that out and got rid of it. You can still use 2-wrench system. You can use a wrench to hold the slot where the motor hub is, and then that will hold it, and then you use another wrench, so you'll have 2 wrenches to outside to remove the hub on the outside. So that's what I did, and then I put it back in. I unmounted it from the table and then mounted it back, and then reset my depth because I was starting to get a little groove there. So we're gonna finish cutting the last few that I did, and then maybe if I got time, I'm going to cut end grooves, finger hold end grooves on there if I got time. So let's go at it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the finger grips on the sides of my boards. And to do that, I use a 1/2-inch coring bit. And the 1/2 inch is from this side to this side. I think this is probably like 3/8 depth from that tip to these edges here. But it's a 1/2 inch across, so that gives you just enough finger hold on the edges to lift the board out. So I'm going to swap this roundover bit with this coring bit. And then I'll have to, I use my table here and my fence, excuse me, as backdrop, and I have to set a depth, so I have to do some measurements here. So bear with me just a second, and I'm going to replace these bits. And if you guys were wondering what these cabinets underneath some of these tables are good for, it is not for storing bits. It is for collecting dust. That's all they're good for. All right, moving along. So I'm going for a certain depth. That way your fingers can fit inside the edges of the cutting board. Makes it a little bit easier to pick up, especially on slick surfaces or when you're working, or if your hands are wet or whatever, cutting stuff. So I'm going to set these depths for the depth or the thickness of the board. So that being said, usually what I like to do, this is a 1/4 inch thick, cut it as a gauge. I like to be centered in the board, so that way when I cut the groove, it's not too close to the bottom and it's not too close to the top, especially the top's got that roundover. So I like to get myself about a 1/4 inch off the bottom, and then if they're all different thicknesses, I just kind of utilize that, but try to center them as much as I can. So that being said, for example, this board here, let's just use it as an example. It is 1 1/4 inches. All right, so remember that's a 1/2 inch coring bit, so 1 1/4 inches. So if I stay up off the bottom 1/4 inch, and then the bit is a 1/2 inch, so that puts it at 3/4, and then that leaves me 1/4 to the edge of the roundover because it's a 1/4 inch roundover, and then 1/4 all the way up to the top, and that's my full 1 1/4 inches. So that's probably what I'm going to stick with. So once again, 1/4 off the bottom, my 1/2 inch bit, coring bit, and then 1/4 inch to the start of the roundover, and then another 1/4 inch up to the top. So how I do that is I will use the back. So this is the front, my roundover. I will use this to the back. All right. So I want to set the distance from this fence to the edge, which you're going to have to spin this to that back edge. I want the distance from that fence to that edge 1/4 inch. All right, so this is how I go about doing that. Once again, my little shim here is a 1/4 inch thick. So, and you can move these fence guides in and out however you want. But what I do, there's measurement. I just use these as reference. I don't actually use them as measurements, but I'm sure they're close. All right, put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. I want to just, it's like I said, this is a 1/4 inch thick. I want to just touch from here to here. I'm spanning this distance, and I just want to barely touch the back edge of this bit. Okay, so I'm going to look over here, and off 0, I'm just over 1/2 inch, and over here, I'm just on a 1/2 inch. So I want those to be the same. So I'm going to split the difference. I'm still touching, I'm still spanning. Right there, they're both the same. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that down on this side. Make sure that's still good. I'm going to have the same gap over here as over here, so my fence is straight. And I'm going to lock that down. All right, so now when I run the back edge, and I'm doing this vertical, when I run that back edge up against here, that should leave me a 1/4 inch gap on the bottom. And then I'll show you with a piece that I cut yesterday what I'm talking about. So this, you can see, is what I'm talking about. This is my back, and then this is my quarter. So I want at least a quarter here, and then I've got enough here. All right, so it's pretty well centered. This is 1.25 inches. Okay. So let's run some through, see what happens. And this is, because this is a coring bit, there's a lot of torque. There's not that little bushing up on top to guide anything. You got to do this slow. This is going to remove a lot of material. It's going to be loud. It's going to have a lot of torque. You're going to have to take your time. And what I do on these, so I measure each one of these, and I've got some lines where I'll start and where I'll stop. And maybe I should show you that also up close. So let me get that other board and I'll show you what I do. Okay. So what I have found is a good starting spot and a good stopping spot is about 2 inches. 1.75 inches, I think is what I was using yesterday. So what I do is I have one of these and I set it at 1.75 inches, 2 inches, 1.5 inches, wherever you want to start. I don't want to get too close to this edge where this roundover is. So I want to be down in here more than at the end. So what I do is just make me a mark. These are 1.75 inches. Make me another mark. Sorry. Okay, and then I'll follow through with this mark. Lock that down. Trying to stay out of the way of the camera so you guys can see. All right, follow that through. Follow this one through. Okay, so now I've got a mark that is 1.75 inches from the edges. So this is my start and then my stop, or my start, my stop. And then what I will do, and this is another reason for having this plastic shield here, I need to turn this back 90 degrees. So my widest point is left to right. A while ago I was having it from front to back to measure my depth, but I need to go left to right. And what I like to do is get another piece of tape. All right, so get another piece of tape. And then I will mark the left side of the blade, and I will mark the right side. And if you took a measure, that should be a 1/2 inch, because that's what that bit is. Yep, 1/2 inch. All right, so then give me a little square here. I'll bring that out. Okay, so those lines extend straight out. So now that I have references here and I have references here, basically what I'm going to do, fence is snug, I'm not plugged in. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this left mark and my mark here, and I'm going to basically, I've got my board flat against the fence. I'm going to slowly drop down onto the coring bit until I'm flush with the platform or the table, and then I'm going to slide until this line is with my right line, and then I will have a nice groove cut. All right, let's do it. So that worked out pretty well. I like it. I like the gap. Thing did good. So I'm going to lay out all my other ones. I got a whole bunch of boards over here I need to do, so I need to mass produce some stuff here. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll be back and we'll do some mass production real quick. See you in a sec. Okay, so we're marked up. Let's rock and roll. So I'm sure my arm is probably blocking the camera with a lot of this. I need to be able to mount it more of an overhead, maybe get a camera on my hat bill. But one thing that I'm doing is using my hand right here where I've got a hold of this fence, and I've actually got my finger back here in this little groove, and I'm using that when I slide as a way to stabilize the movement. That way the blade, when it's cutting, is wanting to grab, and there's a lot of torque there, and it's really wanting to grab your piece, which number one could be dangerous, and number two could cause it to cut a bad cut and to mess up your piece. So I'm using my hand back here as a guide. So I apologize for having my arm in the way, but you kind of have to have it there, otherwise you mess up your cut. Probably one of the last things here is when I start to realize is when this thing's spinning, you can actually see it get darker and darker and darker from the wood sap and stuff building up on it. One thing that I would recommend doing is if you're cutting quite a bit, I like to take a wire brush and just lightly, just a little fine wire brush, and lightly clean this up, and it'll actually cut better because you're starting to get stuff gummed up on your cutting edges. But that's about it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching. If you don't mind hitting the thumbs up, and hit the subscribe if you haven't, and share this video if you want to, pass it along, and hope to see you guys on the next one. And remember to measure twice and cut once.